Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome you to another edition of Leadership Blueprint Podcast. I'm here live with my friend, my very good friend, Kunle Banwo. Together, we'll be bringing another episode of Servant Leadership, which is going to be a continuation of where we stopped last time. So today, we are going to be exploring the subject of servant leadership, and this is going to be the part two of it. I know Kunle is ready. I am ready. And I believe our viewers out there are also ready because we are all going to be learning together, building our leadership skill so that together we can have a transformed African society. The last time we stopped at asking ourselves, what type of leader do I want to be? And I remember that my type of leader, the type of leader that I want to be is not uh, the kind of leader that focuses much of his activities on people, even though making people do things is part of leadership, or uh, collaborating with people to get things done is part of leadership. But my own style of leadership is not to just make people do things. My own kind of leadership is a leadership that focuses more on myself, and I'm going to explain what I meant by that in a moment. Many a times we would realize that it is much more easier to control people, to coordinate people, to organize people, to make people get things done, which is part of the definition of management. But you will also realize that while that is what most leaders like to do, you will also agree with me that the most difficult person to actually lead is yourself. And because of that, I have tried to lead myself in many ways, and I can tell you, I am not easy to to be led. I have tried many a times. I get it right, but I think I get it wrong most times than the numbers of time that I get it right when it comes to leading myself. And only you will agree with me that it is a very difficult job. And that is why you see many leaders kind of switch to autocratic style of leadership because that is more convenient. It's easier to do than for you to be an example that people can observe and also learn from. So I just want you to share your own experience about the kind of leadership that you want to be so that our viewers out there can learn one or two things.
Indeed. Thanks, my friend. And hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us again tonight. And if you happen to be catching up on the recording, I'm sure it will be a good resource to you. So we welcome your contribution and feedback. Now, just to your question, you're right. It is immensely hard to lead oneself. And that's what's commonly called personal leadership. It is the bedrock of leadership and it is challenging. If not to be challenging, then everyone will be outstanding leaders. But that is certainly not the case, sadly. The point is, it's commonly said that we learn more by example than by precept.
Mm,
As you precept is giving instructions, is giving directives, but the the power of example is in demonstrating what you preach, what you actually speak about. And that is where things tend to fall down. So I'm very much in alignment with you that leading myself is certainly a key aspect of leadership. I would say that that is fundamental. It's a bedrock of leadership for everyone, regardless of the sphere in which we operate. Well, I remember that last month, I said that I would like to be true.
Mm,
And that again goes with personal leadership because you're saying that I want to be authentic, but it's not about throwing out buzzwords. Is that I want to be the same person in the public and in private. That really is a challenge of leading oneself, that we are not putting up a front, we are not putting up a show. It's not about speaking well, it's not eloquence, it's not charisma, as it were, even though there's a place for giftings, but it is the moral strength of leadership that sustains it, that makes it authentic, that that inspires people to follow a vision, to join a vision and commit their time and resources to actualizing that vision. And that's why for me, it's personal leadership certainly, but I'll say even more so, it's being true to myself. I need to be honest with myself. I in fact, you know what? I'd rather say, Shagun, my friend, I'm struggling and I need help. So
exactly.
that so that if I need to go and sort myself out, I'd rather take that time and do it than to put up a show and then be found out that this fella is just is a cheat, is a fake, is only just let me use this word, is violating our trust. And that's something that I really do not want to be found in. It's a challenge, it's a lifelong challenge, I have to say, but
Mm.
it's something I want to embark on. And that's the way I see leadership personally.
Yeah, picking from where you stopped, you mentioned something about a leader being true to himself or to herself. And I think one of the challenge we have in Africa is that leaders don't want people to know that they have weaknesses. And so because they don't want people to see their weakness, they always want to put up, they always want to put up a performative kind of disposition so that people will think they are infallible, they cannot make mistakes, they are perfect. But truly speaking, that is not who a leader is. A leader is not somebody that is perfect. A leader is somebody who, when you make mistake, you are able to admit it and you are able to tell your people that, hey, I've messed up here. Uh, I need your forgiveness. We are all human. We do make mistakes occasionally, and I just seek for your forgiveness. And then the leader moves on from that point forward. And I have come to respect leaders who can come out and own their mistakes than leaders who wants to put up a superficial disposition, presenting themselves as one superhero. And that is why I know you will agree with me a lot on this. That is why I love the man John C. Maxwell.
Yeah.
The man is just truly an authentic leader. He's a man who doesn't pretend. He tells you about his mess ups. He tells you about his mistakes in life. He doesn't hide anything to you as a leader. But this is one area that I know is very challenging for most African leaders. You
Do you
want
know
to talk
something?
about that?
Here's something. I think, and I'm laughing at because to say this, what people don't realize is that you are always the last one to realize your mistake.
Exactly.
Other people have seen it long time ago.
They're only pretending as if they didn't know.
Yeah, so while you are pretending and putting up a front,
Mm,
your
mm,
ego blinding
mm,
you. Other
mm.
people are saying, "Hey, excuse me, the emperor is naked. The emperor has no clothes." So you this is why we must put our ego in check.
Yeah,
Is it whilst you're still busy trying to cover it up, people
yeah.
are claiming long ago. So, excuse me, everything is falling apart, and you're the egocentric leader is usually the last one to know,
Mm,
and by the time he knows, too much
mm,
damage has been done.
mm.
So I say, if you say, "Oh, guys, I just made a mistake," you say, "Ah, well, thank God you're alive." Saying it 2 months ago, and that's why I was laughing because yeah, we don't need it. Look,
Yeah, we don't need it.
this whole thing about uh, letting our ego get the better of us and trying
Yeah.
to put up a front of perfection is a
Mm,
waste.
mm,
There is so much to do. There is
mm,
so much to clean up. There is
mm,
so much things to correct. There is, I mean, the troubles and problems all around us are too numerous that we really don't need that distraction.
mm,
And really, it's a distraction. I'll give you an example.
mhm.
And I'm not sure we want to go in this direction, but I'll just say it for the sake of the argument. Look at the whole thing that's happening in our Senate, right?
Yeah.
In Nigeria, for example. And whilst people are doing all that, look, people have formed their opinion a long time ago. They've said, well, we're not surprised. They say people have gone, it's as if people have gone beyond being embarrassed. They just say,
Mm,
well, what else do you expect from them? So
exactly.
whilst they're still trying to all the shenanigans, people have
Yeah.
said, look, just just gonna sit down. So that's my point that whilst people are trying to cover their back and all that, people have seen everything there is to see.
Mm, mm, mm,
Unless you think people are blind and not smart enough, but people are far smarter than you can give them credit for. And that's why
mm,
lead, leaders have to know that, look, the vision is more important than um, personal protection and personal what's that word I want to use, the covering your own self. That's not why you're in position of leadership. You are
mm,
there to serve, and that's exactly why we're talking about this subject of servant leadership. That
mm,
once the leader realizes that my priority is to serve the people,
mm,
priority is to help advance the people, is to
mm,
help us get to a place where that is better than where we are now.
mm,
And not this is not an effort that I can handle single-handedly.
mm,
Then then I think this will help shape and curtail some of the excesses that we find in leadership.
mm. Thank you very much. I think still talking about servant leadership or trying to understand uh, the worldview of a servant leader. If I may ask you, what do you think is the main goal or the philosophy of a servant leader? What should we really look out for as a central point, focal point of a servant leader? What is the philosophy of a servant leader?
Well, I mean, yeah, thanks for raising that question. And by the way, see, this is where I like that word philosophy a lot. It's the what is the motivating thought? What
Yeah,
is the dominant idea
yeah.
of a servant leader?
Mm,
What goes on in the mind of a servant leader?
mm,
And this is where we I suppose we talked about it briefly last week.
yeah.
Look, the key point is that people's life can be better than it
Mm,
is now.
mm, mm,
That we are not even near our best.
mm,
The conditions that we are surrounded with
mm,
can be way better.
mm,
And if those conditions are improved, we will all benefit.
mm,
Not only us, our children will benefit,
mm,
our children will benefit.
mm,
This is a key driver in the mind of someone
mm,
who is in a position of leadership to serve.
mm,
So he's not looking for personal uh, credit or
mm,
personal profiting, is after the transformation that makes the lives of people better.
mm,
For example, we can be very specific about this. If we agree that it is not the best ideal for the best brains in our country or in our continent to be exported to other nations,
mm,
that if these people are in the nation and the conditions of life are more suitable for them to be the best they can be,
mm,
then we suddenly start to shape everything that, number one, they must be able to operate with the protection of law.
mm,
Law enforcement must be able to protect them, their lives and properties.
mm,
Number two, that they must be able to thrive economically. Number three, that they must have the necessary infrastructure to
mm,
live.
mm,
If and I can go on and on.
mm,
If these are the things in the mind of people in positions of leadership, then our attitude and how we approach everything changes.
mm,
But if on the other hand, it's about I want to serve myself and I want to get all the benefits I can ever get,
mm,
that chance to make it, then you cannot serve with that mindset. It's impossible.
mm,
And only take from people and in the process damage their life chances and outcomes.
mm. Thank you very much. I think one of the leaders that I've come to respect a lot, whose philosophy has been shaping my own leadership philosophy in the last, I would say, in the last 5 to 6 years now. His philosophy has really been shaping the way I see myself as a leader, and that is, and to tell you about this man, he never held any political office, and yet he was a very influential leader, and that's Mahatma Gandhi of India. He has one philosophy that I can even say is the central idea of School of Transformational Leadership, and that philosophy is be the change that you want to see in the world. Don't stop looking for a change society. You just be that change, and then from that point, continue to move forward. But that is not the idea that I really want to bring out about him this time around. Mahatma Gandhi is also credited for saying that the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And I believe that this is the baseline of a servant leader. It's not about you,
No.
it's about the people you are leading. It's not about you having the best official car. It's not about you having the best having your office in the penthouse. It's not about you spending vacation on the sea with your family, posting pictures on Facebook or on other social media platforms to tell people that you have arrived. That is not what leadership is. It is for you to lose yourself in the service of others, seeking to ensure that people's life are truly transformed by your actions. And so for me, to serve others with credibility is what I believe is the main goal and the philosophy of a servant leader. Because if you cannot serve people, if people cannot see you as a credible leader, then there is a problem somewhere. And I don't know how many leaders in our society today that people can really say these are credible leaders. People may support you for a while, probably maybe because of the few change they are getting from you, from the peanuts they are getting from you in the moment. But we all know that the moment you are out of that position, they switch their allegiance to somebody else. That's not the kind of impact we are talking about as a leader. So a leader has to be credible. You have to show that the interest of people is your number one priority. And I think I read something recently by a philosopher. He said, one of the ways you can know if a society is truly civilized is how they treat the weakest people in that society, how they treat the poor, how they treat people who cannot help themselves. That is how you will know a society that is truly civilized. And I think this boils down to what a leader is supposed to do. You must be the voice of people that cannot speak for themselves. You must be the pillar for those who cannot help themselves. You are not in that position to enrich yourself, to acquire unnecessary, unlawful wealth for yourself and your cronies. So, like I said, it is to serve others, and not just serving them, but with credibility, serving them with people knowing that this is a credible leader. This is a leader we can trust. This is a leader we can entrust our life into his hand.
I agree with you, my friend. And I will say, maybe just two quick points on what you said, that yes, absolutely. Someone who can be a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah.
But I'll probably add a little to that, that is somebody who can now give a voice.
Mm. So the
So
voiceless.
it's one thing to be the voice.
With voice, yeah.
Now give
So
a
give them a platform. Mm.
voice to them.
Mm.
It's one thing to help people.
Mm.
It's another thing to empower people.
Empower them. Exactly. Mm.
Can They can both help themselves
Mm.
and help others. In other
Mm.
words, the priority of leadership is
Mm.
to create a what I would call a virtuous cycle.
Circle.
Uh, Someone is initially helpless or disempowered, but
Mm.
then you help
Mm.
and then empower
Mm.
so that that person can now help
Help
himself
others. Mm.
and then help others,
Mm.
and then create people that can do the same. So,
Exactly.
and this is it then comes to a point where leadership virtue becomes
Mm.
culture.
Mm.
That is when leadership is truly successful.
Mm.
Culture is the most is the shall I say the biggest measure
Mm.
of the success of any form of leadership.
Mm.
And this can be both negative and positive.
Mm.
When you have the adverse leadership, you
Mm.
see that the culture that they create is that of constant value degradation
Mm.
that pervades society. On the flip side, when you have the right kind of leadership,
Mm.
the resultant effect of their work is that they have created a culture that repeats, that replicates what they are. And this is the challenge you're facing. Now, and I like the way we began that we cannot suddenly create culture, create
Mm.
a brand,
Mm.
start with the individual
Mm.
that then commits to ideals that one is willing to pay some sacrifice for, because
Mm.
leadership is difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I give you look at this very example, and I'm sure most people can relate to this. If you go to a party, right? Let's say there's a celebration. You check the number of people that are sitting down versus the number of people that are serving. A good picture of the fact that it is easier to be served
Mm.
than to serve.
Mm.
That's why most leaders just want to go there and be served.
Mm.
Just serve me instead of thinking, I'm here to serve. That's why Jesus turned it turned the paradigm on his head and
Yeah.
said, you are all used to people
Yeah.
who go against
Serving
them.
you. So it
But
shall not be so.
no, this is not the
Mm,
paradigm I'm laying down here.
mm,
You see, it was Jesus was working on the philosophy of these church people. He
mm,
was saying your mind has to change to
mm, mm,
serve. So how did he do it? He, their leader, he got up and started to wash their feet. And they were shocked. Peter said, no, 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 no. You are the leader. You can't do this. Listen, if you don't allow me to wash your feet, you are not part of my team. You are exempting yourself from my team. Peter said, this is why I left everything. No, I will give everything to be here. That message was properly stamped, imprinted on their minds.
mm.
That was how these people live for the rest of their lives.
Exactly.
So,
It was amazing that the rivalry that existed amongst them when Jesus was around did not exist after he left because they got the message and they were able to live out that because they saw Jesus uh, did the same. They saw the example, and that is what we're going to talk about now. That's talking about uh, the distinction between, and of course, this credit goes to John C. Maxwell too, who was the first person to kind of create a kind of comparison between the wash and basin leader and a feet washing leader. And of course, for those of us who are Bible students, we will understand where those ideas are coming from. The wash and basin leader is no other person than Pilate. And of course, the feet washing leader is Jesus. Uh, we could see when Pilate, as a leader, was confronted with a national burning issue, what he did when he didn't know what to do was to absolve himself of all the responsibility. He said, I am
or
washing my wife.
he knew what to do, but
Yeah,
he lacked the courage.
the courage as a leader. And that was what we're talking about behind the backstage before we came live, that part of the challenge of a servant leader is being able to be decisive, because whether you like it or not, you cannot all the time continue to say you want 100% consensus. Sometimes it can happen, but in most cases, you are not going to get 100% consensus as a servant leader. And at that point, you need to be decisive. You need to have the courage to be able to take the right decision. So I just want you to elaborate more on those two principles of Washan Basin leader and a feet washing leader for our viewers to learn from.
Yes, I'll start, and then I know you have a lot of insight in that space as well. So now I'll yield the mic to you. But
Yeah.
just a quick point: if you consider those two individuals, Pilate versus Jesus, look at their lives. Pilate was a man that came from the culture that uh, that that was very dominant. That was the Roman
The
culture,
Roman culture.
and in the Roman culture, there is no question about who the leader is.
Mm.
You know by their pomp, by their
Yeah,
dressing,
yeah,
by the affluence that
yeah,
surrounds them,
yeah.
by the fact that everybody knows toast to them, everybody is in direct, submission to them. No
Mm,
question about it.
mm, mm,
Because of this, they wield a lot of power.
mm.
So you would imagine then that if there is something to be done that requires uh, being decisive, being courageous, that they should be able to it should come without caring,
Yeah,
because the power and authority was very much there.
exactly.
And in fact, he boasted to Jesus, said, "Hey, I'm asking you a question. You're not answering me. Don't you
I
know
have the power to release you, to
exactly?
let you go.
I can let you go." And Jesus said, "Well, you know what? We are using you. We are using you. Just do your job and let's get on from it."
Mm,
Um, but but here was Pilate. Let me put it this way. Pilate was more willing to be popular
mm,
than to be principled.
mm,
They said, if you let this man go,
mm.
you are not a friend of
Of
Rome.
Caesar.
You're
Mm,
not Caesar's friend. We
mm,
will report you to Caesar.
mm,
Pilate was afraid of his job.
mm.
He said, you know what? Let me feign ignorance.
Wow.
I know that this man is innocent.
Mm,
How to please these people.
mm,
So let me just find a way to escape the
mm,
situation.
mm,
I'll let hand of it
mm.
and in a way make them own the blame. Say, look, if
Yeah,
you kill him, his blood will be on
yeah,
your
up
head.
to you. Mm,
This guy said, okay, we'll have the
yeah.
blood on our hands. He said,
Mm,
okay, in that case, I wash my hand,
mm,
I'm
mm,
guilty. It's a typical politician
mm,
who is non-committal
mm,
on issues of principles.
mm,
And that is how I would characterize Pilate.
mm,
Whereas, look at Jesus.
mm,
Jesus was very clear. My goal is to solve not just a national problem,
mm,
but a global problem. I have come to solve a problem for the human race.
mm,
I'm willing to go to the point of sacrifice. I'm willing to lose in order to gain.
mm,
So it was there. And of course, so there's nothing worse than someone to have invested so much time to
mm,
cultivate uh, uh, people in discipleship, and then everything goes down the drain. And Jesus was so intent, and he knew that the time was upon him to go. And he thought, you know what? Let me let these individuals know that there is something bigger than all your private interests.
mm,
So, what did he do? He demonstrated it by going that step to. It was like he used what I would call a shock therapy.
mm,
This in the culture of the Israelis, in fact, I would say in the Middle East, you would have if you are hosting a guest, you would always position a servant by the door,
mm.
people to wash their feet because most of the time they wear sandals and the roads are dusty.
Yeah, dusty.
I mean, desert environment. So when they're coming in, particularly to eat, do you know how the way they used to eat that time? They do what they call they sit permissible. They recline. So when
Mm,
you sit, your leg is very close to the other person's body and
mm,
probably so in order to have some kind of hygiene, you would have someone positioned to wash their feet
mm,
and then they go on to sit down at the table to eat.
mm,
Now imagine what a servant will normally do, which is well known within their culture.
mm,
You now see the leader of the group putting his clothes down,
mm,
putting on towel, pouring in water, and saying, Bring your big foot here and
mm,
start to wash it.
mm,
Your dusty feet.
mm,
That was a shock to their system. And he said, You call me Lord
mm,
and Master, and you are right.
mm,
If I then, your Lord, wash your
mm,
feet,
mm.
you must do this for one another.
So
In
that's
other words,
mm,
you must serve
one
your
another.
one another, even in the even if it means stooping to the lowest point.
Mm, mm,
This is something that we are sadly missing,
mm,
and this is why our societies are going in the other direction.
mm,
We must again revive this attitude, this philosophy
mm,
of leadership.
mm.
We have aptitude in abundance. You have people say, "Oh, I schooled at this school of
Yeah,
college,
yeah.
this, you know." That's not the point. We've seen all they do,
Mm,
and yet they still damage people's lives.
mm,
So, so the curriculums of university is not exactly what will save us.
mm,
Transform mind,
mm,
the mindset of servant leadership that will
mm,
start to make a difference in our
mm,
lives.
mm. Thank you very much. I think you said a lot. I will just say that just like Jesus presented himself as a servant, leader by showing an example. And I think he's making a statement by himself showing that example that when you are a leader, it's not an opportunity for you to lord it over people. It's not an opportunity for you to take advantage of people. It's not an opportunity for you to molest people. It's not an opportunity for you to make people feel less than they actually are. It's an opportunity to show that you care for them, you love them, you have their best interests at heart. And that is what Jesus has demonstrated. Even when Peter refused for his feet to be washed, he said, look, if I don't wash you, you don't have any part in me. That means you do not belong to this idea. You don't have this mindset of servant leadership that I'm trying to establish amongst you. And then Peter, at the end of the day, said, well, Master, it's not just my leg alone. You will wash my head, my hand, and every part of me. And I think this is very, very critical. And I wish some of our leaders can actually listen and heed to this call of leading by example. If we are leaders, if we cannot demonstrate how leadership is, then we are failing in our leadership. And that is the reason why I feel the society is collapsing. Now, the problem of leadership, in my own understanding, because I've spent many years trying to process what exactly is the problem in Africa, and I've been able to zero everything down to leadership problem. And I know that once we're able to address and rectify the problem of leadership in Africa, every other thing will fall into place. We already have the resources. We have the manpower. We have the natural resources. We even have the financial resources. The only thing that is lacking is the manpower that will harness those resources to bring the desired result that we all want. And I've made up my mind because we're not just dealing with the president of a nation here.
No.
We're not dealing with the governors of the state. They have their own share of the blame. I'm not excluding them from it, but this problem of leadership cut across homes, cut across businesses, cut across churches, different denominations, cut across mosques, cut across local government, cut across even the traditional rulers.
It is a whole of life affair.
Exactly. So if we understand that this is something we all need to come together and really find a solution to, Kule, I must tell you the truth. I've been privileged to work with a lot of Nigerians since I've moved into US. I've met some very highly uh, highly disciplined Nigerians who are very dedicated to their work. And I must also confess to you that I've also met Nigerians that when you look at the way they are behaving and their attitude and disposition to work here in the US, you will understand why Nigeria as a nation is where it is today. The same mentality, the same attitude, they have kind of imported the same thing into this society. But of course, the society is resisting it. But for me, who is in a position of leadership, who is trying to tell them this is the way we need to go, but you see them restricting, the direction of where we should go. They want to do things
Let me
their own way.
let me remind you some of the things that
Yeah,
we used to do
yeah,
as young men.
yeah,
That an alligator
yeah.
in
In
Nigeria
Nigeria,
does not
cannot
become
suddenly become,
a
or a
lizard,
lizard. A lizard
or a
in Nigeria
lizard in Nigeria.
cannot become an alligator.
In the US. No, no. You
Yeah,
see, a cat or
yeah.
a
A
cat,
leopard.
a cat in Nigeria cannot suddenly
Yeah,
become a lion in the
exactly. Yeah,
no. You see, people change places
yeah,
more than places change people.
yeah.
And people can only give what they have.
Mm,
So to just to echo your sentiment and how
yeah,
I can feel your passion there.
yeah.
In my mind, I've also concluded similarly that if there's any investment to make now,
Mm,
it is deliberate leadership cultivation
exactly.
at the lowest
The
level
West level. Yeah.
with young people, little
Who are
spare.
still malleable. They are still
Yes,
malleable.
yes, in the sphere of influence that I have opportunity to work in,
Yeah.
that have to be a deliberate
Mm,
cultivation. The
mm,
reason is this, look at sometimes I think that we are almost hoping we're as if we're gamblers waiting for
mm,
godly luck.
mm,
Why do I say that? How many times, or should I say, would you ever imagine that someone will allow to drive
mm,
on our streets
mm,
without going to a driving school,
mm,
driving lesson, and having your license?
mm,
I know people cheat,
mm.
but the policy of government is that before we allow you on our roads, you must go through a training system
Exactly.
that satisfies you
Mm,
as being safe enough to drive on our roads because we don't
mm,
want it to destroy lives and
mm,
property.
mm,
Okay. If we do that before we can allow people drive, how is it that there is no deliberate investment in leadership development to the point that we don't even allow anybody near the position of leadership until they have in quote been certified, been
mm,
trained, been cultivated?
mm,
What that means is when people then assume positions of leadership
mm,
and are expecting them to do the right thing,
mm,
then we are probably behaving like gamblers.
mm,
We're more or less hoping for godly luck.
mm,
No wonder, no wonder we have been out of luck
mm, mm.
because positions of leadership don't make people leaders. It exposes their lack of leadership.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
The higher you climb, the more we're able to see what you have underneath you.
Mm,
Because you're certainly going to be exposed. You're going to see everything.
exactly.
And that's the problem.
Mm,
There, if you ask me, one of the most important needs that every level of every like say, institution must focus on, and I'm very particular about church,
mm,
and, I will tell you why. I think you probably know why. You tell me, how many avenues are there where people, young and old, will sit down for 2 hours and someone is just talking to them
mm,
and they're not saying anything back?
mm,
That only happens mostly in churches,
mm,
maybe to some extent in mosques, maybe.
mm,
So if there are, and then of course schools, but
mm.
at least people pay to go to schools.
Yeah.
But
Well,
there is
it's
other
even at school is interactive sometimes,
active,
depending. Yeah.
but in churches,
Yeah.
I've never attended a church where maybe somebody is preaching and somebody just saying, no, I don't agree. It doesn't happen. So even for 45 minutes, 60 minutes,
They will do deliverance for the person.
yeah, you are giving input that's going to the mind of, maybe they may not agree, they may not say
Yeah.
it out, but at least
Yeah.
so there are, I don't know of many opportunities to deliberately invest in leadership cultivation
Mm,
than some of these. And I think that we are missing I mean, a huge opportunity. And if you do that, imagine, let's assume people meet once a week. That is 52 Sundays that could be invested in leadership development. And then ask yourself, how many years have they been in church? Some people 20 years, some people 35 years.
mm,
So that should have been enough opportunity to cultivate leaders.
mm.
So what are we doing? What exactly are we teaching people then?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think there is something that has shifted in our churches today, and that is, uh, we still claim we are preaching the gospel of salvation, but to my own mind and to what I can see, I think there's been a big shift from the primary focus of the gospel to the gospel of exaltation of self and the promotion or showcasing of self. And and it's really sad. And I think it's one of the things that we as church leaders really need to address.
Mm.
If we don't want what happens to churches, you will agree with me that the fire is not all that burning in America anymore.
It's not
In the
just America.
in the 90s, I'm even talking about the Pentecostal movement that started in the 1900, from 1900 down to the 80s and to part of early 90s. The fire of Pentecostalism was really burning in America as a nation, for instance.
Mm.
But for somebody who has seen how the movement has been moving, and you look at what is happening today, you would definitely agree with me that the fire has really gone down. And
Let me
that is a
suggest to you.
signal to you that if care is not taken, the fire may eventually be quenched.
Well, let me suggest to you that with the way things are going, the future of America is European churches.
Mm, mm,
Most churches in Europe
mm.
been converted to building estates,
Museums, mm,
estate to museums, to
restaurants.
restaurants, to pubs,
Mm,
and then in some cases to mosques.
mm.
So that's why I look, everything goes on in cycle
Inside.
unless you change the
And
image.
that is the fear I am having for Nigeria too.
Oh,
That is the
exactly.
fear.
Listen,
That is
the,
the
the
fear.
thing about Nigeria
Mm,
is we may be confusing a lot of activities for impact.
yeah,
See, activities are not impact, and I think there is a kind of disillusionment is starting to set in. That's why people are questioning more. Things that in 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would not see in Nigeria is
yeah,
now happening. We're now having a lot of, I see a lot of YouTube platform where they question
yeah.
what happened. That is fairly new.
Mm,
And that is how society then tend to say it happened in Europe
yeah,
when the church was so dominant and it controlled people's lives.
yeah,
Until they started to revolt in what they call the Age of Enlightenment.
yeah,
Those people, what they did was they left church. They also took their children away. To
yeah.
the point that you will find children who have never ever stepped into church.
Mm,
So all of the virtues that you will have gotten from scriptures are not even in their minds at all.
mm,
Now look at how that affects society, the moral fabric of society, and
mm,
other. So even though we seem to have focused on church a bit, but I can also expand that to the fact that even schools, if our school curriculum were to function properly,
mm.
leadership development must also be inculcated into it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, look, we will not have the we will not be investing deliberately, intentionally in
Mm,
leadership.
mm,
And need it. Our societies need it. In fact, our very lives
mm.
depend on it because everything rises and falls on
On
leadership.
leadership.
That's
Mm,
what Dr. Maxwell says.
mm,
And and in fact, if you look at all of the leadership philosophers, they all say the same thing.
mm,
that without leadership,
mm,
society fails.
mm,
And God helps us. If the people that are leading you are blind,
mm,
means you're going to end up exactly where they're going, and that
mm,
place is called a ditch.
mm,
But it also indicates something. If someone that is leading you is blind, it must mean that you too are blind.
mm,
Otherwise, you'll be able to see that they are blind and you are leading to a ditch. So this is why leadership cultivation
mm,
is not an option. It's no longer an option.
mm,
It is a necessity.
mm,
Our lives, our
mm,
very lives depend on
mm.
it.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm really loving this conversation, and I think uh, it doesn't require any preparation because there are things we can see, there are things we can relate to. But then I just want to ask you, what then can we say is the purpose of servant leadership?
Well, I think you already said quite a number of it in our conversation that what is the purpose of leadership, of servant leadership? Well, I would say it is pretty much the purpose of leadership
Of
in
leadership, yeah, exactly.
and if you look at it, for you to be led from where you are to another place must be an admission that where you are is not the best that you can be.
Mm,
That is fundamental. That is what instigates the need
mm,
to translocate
mm,
to a better
mm,
experience, better
mm,
environment,
mm,
better outcomes.
mm,
Therefore, a servant leader is one
mm,
who is devoted to the service of ensuring that the process,
mm,
resources,
mm,
the uh, sacrifice,
mm,
the work that it entails
mm,
to move from point A to B. Because
mm,
sometimes it may be a marathon. So
mm,
one leader may not get us to the end goal.
mm,
This is why we continue to cultivate leadership so that wherever one finishes,
mm,
another one picks up the baton and
mm,
say, let's go. We are going somewhere.
mm,
Let's keep going. So
mm,
a servant leader, therefore, the purpose is the, I would say, the continuous, the progressive movement
mm,
towards a future
mm,
that promises better outcomes than the
mm,
present.
mm, mm,
If we're not getting better,
mm,
then leadership,
mm,
the leadership focus, leadership effort, leadership vision must be questioned.
mm.
So
Well,
the question is, are we better today than we were yesterday? Is there a sense of movement?
mm, a sense of movement. Mm.
Because
Well,
it may indeed take several years, several effort, depending on how much damage has been done.
mm, mm. Thank you very much. And I think I can relate to what you have said, and I cannot agree less to what you have said, that the bottom line of the purpose of leadership is nothing but to enrich and to enhance human progress. If progress is not happening, leadership is not happening.
No, because
There has to
very
be
word
some movements,
is
there has
verb,
to be some
an action.
upward mobility, there has
Absolutely.
to be some transformation, some changes, some visible transformation that we can point to that this is transformative. There
I
has
cannot
to be progress in
go
every ramification.
100%. And this is not building roads because
Yeah. It's not building.
not
Thank you
building
for
road.
bringing that. It's
It's
not
not building
building
new
roads.
bridges.
Yeah. It's
No,
not
no,
showing off one elephant project
no. It's not pipe pour water.
or
uh
one stadium. Or
it's
one
not stadium.
stadium.
No. Look. Anyone can build a building.
Yeah.
Say, I'm sure you'll have seen a lot of this in America
Yeah.
as I think of it in Europe. You
Yeah.
will see buildings. One time I entered one hospital. If you look at all of the external walls,
Yeah.
they are made with bricks. you
mm,
could tell that this architecture must be at least 100 years old.
mm,
But if you enter into the hospital,
mm,
you see maintenance in
mm,
motion.
mm.
So it's not new buildings we need. If
The
mind,
progress we are talking about is putting system, workable system, infrastructures in
exactly, if the
place.
mind is not transformed,
Mm,
the building you built will be destroyed.
exactly, exactly. And that tells you so much about the emphasis on Jesus. This was a man that wanted to change the world, but he didn't focus on building things.
He never built a building.
No building, no structure, not a single structure. Rather, he focused his attention on building people. And that is what many leaders need to focus their attention on today. I'm not saying those buildings are not good. Of course, we are not always going to sit on grasses, but then we should understand that people development is much more important, and we should prioritize that over building things, because just a little natural disaster can wipe off any things that you have built.
Any building.
Yeah,
And even if a disaster does not wipe it off,
yeah,
if, if people's mind
yeah,
have not been transformed into the quality of building you have built,
yeah,
they will take the building back to the formation of their mind.
exactly.
Meaning, if somebody's mind is I'm a hot dweller, and you give him a mansion, it's going to take that mansion and turn it to a hut because
Mm,
that's what his mind is.
yeah. Mm. Thank you very much. So let me also ask you, what then should be the mindset of a servant leader?
Oh,
What kind of mindset should a servant leader have?
it's a whole new series that you and I will have to deliver. The mindset.
Yeah,
Woof.
because that is where the changes
Yeah.
actually starts from.
Well, see, how does the mind get set?
Mm,
You see, it tells me, imagine somebody who is trying to mix cement in order to
mm,
start building. Before the cement, see, when you first do a mixture
mm,
and then you apply, and then the mixture start to set.
mm,
Now, but there are things that has happened that have been mixed,
mm,
and that talks about a number of things, including the values.
mm, mm,
What are the values?
mm,
Shagun, 2 months ago, we had we have this quarterly investment in our teenagers.
mm,
So we did a session where we wanted them to write down their mission, their purpose statement,
mm,
mission statement, their value statement,
mm,
their goals, their plans,
mm,
and their accountability
mm,
uh, resources. So part of what we did was we asked them to keep on doing this because we want them to start thinking that way. I'm talking about people between ages of 12 and 18.
mm,
I saw young people perhaps for the first time in their lives, writing down their value statement. These are the things I value truth.
mm,
Shagun, ask yourself,
mm,
how many of our leaders
mm,
can write down their values and say,
mm. I
things that
value truth.
they value truth?
Mm,
How many of our leaders actually value truth?
mm.
What you probably hear is honesty is my best policy. But when somebody says that to you, please run. Because if honesty is the best policy, it means that would be an occasional thing. It means
Mm,
sometimes not
mm,
being honest could
mm,
be a better policy
mm,
or could be a good policy. It means
mm.
see, honesty should only be the only policy,
Only
not
policy, not the best.
I'm just highlighting that. But how
Mm,
many of them believe in timeliness,
mm.
in in loyalty? How,
Yes.
are some of the things that are the ingredients
Mm,
which the mind of a leader is set.
mm,
So it begins, from my point of view,
mm,
what are the values?
mm,
And if you look at a servant leader,
mm,
service is certainly one of the values.
mm.
A servant leader believes in the value of people,
Yeah,
in the sanctity of the life of people.
yeah.
Because if I believe in the sanctity of your life,
Mm.
then I will do everything to protect it.
I'll value you.
I will do everything to protect it.
mm,
If I also believe that you are you are valuable to me,
mm.
and everything that I think is good for me, I will want you to have those things as well.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's begin from the value definition of leadership. In
Mm,
fact, for all of our listeners, I
mm,
I, I want to request when
mm,
you get back home, take a few minutes
mm,
of paper, write down the things you value. Write 10 things. I value
mm,
this, and I would like to protect these things as my value system.
mm.
Let's begin from there because if you don't have value,
Exactly. Value.
in fact, your leadership is
Mm,
a reflection of the things you value.
Exactly. It's a reflection of the things you value. When you see somebody always gravitating towards money, 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 money,
Hmm.
that is their preoccupation. That is what is preoccupying their mind.
That
But
person is
when you
telling you,
see somebody who is always interested in changing the way things are within the society or the community without any hope of any financial reward, you know that is what such a person truly values. So our values, just like you have said, is truly important.
and to write that down. The problem is most of the people who lead us in whatever capacity
Mm,
have never been challenged or trained in these things we are saying.
mm,
I doubt if any of them has ever written down, these are the values that I would not violate. They
mm,
have never been taken through that.
mm,
Wonder it's not a problem for them to steal. It's not a problem for them to kill. It's not
mm,
a problem for them to destroy. It's not a problem for them to backstab. It's not a
mm,
problem
mm.
because they have never been taken through a system that help to reinforce values that they must not.
Exactly, exactly. Now, so let's talk about the preeminent principles of a servant leaders. Uh, I'm going to mention about
Yes, please.
four things that I believe that they are principles that guides the operation of a servant leader. Number one of the principles that guides the operation of a servant leader is that as a servant leader, you have the opportunity to explore divergence of opinions. You are able to source different opinions. You are able to hear different people's view, what they are thinking, what they are processing in their mind, and then you are able to put everything together. And then from what you have been able to put together, you are able to come up with something that will be in the best interest of everybody. Not only that, apart from encouraging diverse thinking, another preeminent principle of a servant leader is that it also creates a culture of trust.
Mm.
And that was where the idea of the credibility of a leader is. As a servant leader, the only reason why people are going to submit to you is because they can trust you. You remember when we began this class, was it when we were talking about what is leadership? We asked the question, can you help me? Do you love me? Can I trust you? You know, these are very essential part of a servant leader. You must be able to build that culture of trust. And I think that is one of the biggest problem we have in our society as Africans today. Even people that are supporting their most beloved political leader, they know the reason why they are supporting them anyway. It's not because of any value.
Nothing
Uh,
like
they have any value proposition towards them. Is just because of the transaction that will happen between their support for them and the position they are occupying. It's not because of any value that is binding them together. As a servant leader, you must be able to create that culture of trust. People must be able to trust you. People must be able to entrust the totality of their being into you. And again, another thing about servant leader is that a servant leader is not always thinking my idea should be the only idea. You must be unselfish in your thinking. You must be able to understand that there are other people in the room who probably has a better idea than you have. And for me, as a person, and I've been practicing this in my own little way as a leader, if I have the privilege to lead any group, and I'm saying this because I have had opportunity to lead groups, I always ensure that it is the best ideas that wins, not my idea. And I think this is what a servant leader should embrace. Your idea must not always be the one that wins the conversation all the time. You should allow the best idea to thrive. Then lastly, a servant leader must be able to develop leadership potential in other people. And that is the kind of example we saw in Jesus. He served his disciples and he empowered them to go and do likewise, to go and do the same. He said, if you love me and you believe in these principles that I've laid down, go also and do the same unto other people. So a leader, a servant leader must be able to develop the potential. There is no doubt there will always be people with potential that will come on that will come around you. Don't bury their potential. Some people, as soon as they see somebody with a great potential, all they begin to do is to see how they can bring that person out of the limelight. They want to obscure that person from being seen, from being noticed. But that is not the way a genuine leader should behave. You must allow people to thrive under you. So I don't know if you have any thoughts
No,
on that.
I'll just maybe just two quick points. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's just a reflection of the leader's insecurity.
Yeah.
When you want to be the smartest person in the room, you
Mm,
are an insecure leader, you need to
mm,
go down, frankly.
mm, mm,
And leadership is not smartness.
mm. It's not
As much
about smartness.
no, it's not about smartness. In fact, a good leader wants to have a lot of smart people around him,
Mm,
powerful people around him,
mm,
and harness those resources.
mm,
It's not about being the tallest tree in the forest.
mm,
No, the lion is not the strongest animal in the
mm,
jungle or in the savannah. The,
mm,
ele- the elephant is stronger than the lion.
mm.
Lion leads the elephant.
Exactly.
And it's not because it's the strongest. The cheetah is faster than the lion.
Yeah.
It's not. That's why I love the scripture. The race is not to the swift,
It's not to the swift.
strong.
Mm,
Bread is to the wise.
mm,
So it shows that it, leaders. That's why I talk about human leadership. We want to serve a cause and a people,
mm,
and then we're going to find the best resources to help us achieve that. And then
mm,
maybe one quick point,
mm,
which is what you mentioned. I'm just going to echo that, which is around is the investment,
mm. In
leadership
people. Mm,
investment. If we do not invest in leadership cultivation, we're going to have exactly what we have created, which will be lack of leadership. It will be scant leadership. It will be deformed leaders. And I love something that Dr. Miles Miro said. Said if the wise refuse to lead,
mm,
they will be led by fools.
mm, mm,
If you used to invest in leadership,
mm,
you're going to have all around you weakness of leadership. So we have a choice to make. Are we going to rethink how we view leadership
mm,
and to cultivate resources, people around us
mm,
who go better? Look,
mm,
someone I would rather be a shoulder on which somebody can stand on and see
mm,
further.
mm,
Because in the end, if we get to where we need to be, we
mm,
will all be the better for it and the people after us.
mm,
It's not about one person. It's not whose name is written on the building. And
mm.
that's why I love Jesus. He never built a building. So you can't say, look, question, can you find me a photograph of Jesus? Or somebody a drawing of him? We don't
Yeah,
have it.
it's
Those
not
things
important.
are not important.
Yeah,
There is no building that say, that was Jesus' house. We
yeah,
don't have it.
we
In
don't
fact,
get.
maybe it was built with brick, and that brick will have totally been wiped away
But its principles are still reoccurring,
because
transcending generations.
in fact, those principles are the one that have been taught in all of our Ivy Leagues. They
Yeah,
are just, they're just not giving Jesus credit.
credit.
So, so this is why there are things. In fact, I would go as far to say that leadership is actually a very spiritual thing.
It is. It is.
But it's not
It
tangible
is.
to
Yeah,
touch.
it
But,
is.
but the effect
It is.
is not, you cannot dispute it.
Yeah.
It's like beauty. You cannot say this is what beauty looks like. I mean, or it's hard to define it. But when you see it,
Yeah. You know it.
when you see the sun come out, this is beautiful. When you see a sunset, you see the rainbow come, you say this is beautiful. But if you say find beauty, I don't know the definition for it, honestly.
Mm. That's true.
But when you see leadership, you recognize it.
Mm.
And
That's true.
that's why we we must even go beyond the theories, even though the theories are good for educational purposes.
Mm.
But we must know that it is both the precept
Mm.
and the example
Mm.
going hand in hand. The
Mm.
precept and the example, the precept or the principles and the example
Mm.
going hand in hand. And let's be very clear about the definition or the redefinition of what it is, because oftentimes we take something good, we define it into something else,
Mm.
bastardize it.
Mm.
We need to return back to the original principles, original precepts of leadership, so
Mm.
that we can start to get it right.
Mm.
See, uh, a journey of 1,000 miles must begin in one day.
It is that.
It does not matter how bad things are.
Mm.
The moment leadership begins to step up, hope begins to surge. So that's why I say, yes, we things might be truly challenging, but
Mm.
when leadership, the right kind of leadership, start to step forward, the society, the environment start to change.
Now, picking up from where you start, what we are basically doing from this podcast, Leadership Blueprint podcast, is we're trying to show the people what leadership is, how to recognize a leader when they see one. Now, can we quickly talk about if it's just going to be giving a bullet points uh, example of the quality that we feel that a servant leader should possess? What are the qualities that when we see these qualities in a person, we will know that this person is exhibiting servant leadership? So do you have some of those
I will share it
qualities?
to you, and I would like I know you have a lot to add to it as well. I'll put
Example.
that two headings:
Mm.
attitudinal
Mm-hmm.
and aptitudinal. So things that have to do with attitudes
Yeah.
based on values, and
Yeah.
the things that are based
That
on
to the capacity.
yes, and capacity building,
Mm.
going hand in hand.
Mm.
So we talk about those attitudes again. Most of what we said around values are going
Mm.
to come.
Mm.
Do you the value for people?
Mm.
This is my submission. How you value people is
Mm.
exactly how you lead them.
Mm.
So
Mm.
value
Mm.
for people, right?
Mm. So when people see certain leaders leading in a certain way, they know that that is what they value, even though they may be telling you something else.
Doesn't matter what you say to us,
Yeah.
your value system will betray itself. That's why in Yoruba they say "Efiniwa." You
If
cannot
you
have
are,
who
you
you
cannot
truly
hide it.
are.
Yeah.
We show. it doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
If you are disrespectful,
Mm,
it will still show.
mm, mm,
So respect,
mm,
trust,
mm,
honesty,
mm,
faithfulness.
mm,
It can go on and on, but and then understand because of our time. I
mm,
understand is now the capacity building can, because it's not only important to be good.
mm. You have
You
to be competent.
of leadership. So, for example, that's why I will name things like creativity. Can you craft a vision, planning,
Mm,
uh, timeliness?
mm,
Do you the self-awareness? Can
mm,
you recognize your own weakness so that you
mm,
know how to find the help you need?
mm,
We can go on, and we
mm,
can't exhaust it in the time
mm.
that we have. But these are very essential things. Please, add add
Yeah,
a
you are right. Thankfully, most of the things you said are not going to be exactly the same thing I'm going to say, but they're just going to complement what you have mentioned. And I think one of the good quality of a servant leader is the ability to be able to listen, active listening. You cannot buy that with money. You cannot wave it away. A leader must be able to listen. You must be able to hear people out. That is one. Then another thing about servant leadership is that a servant leader must be empathetic to the feelings of others. You must know how the shoe is pinching uh, other people. You mustn't just assume, we're not just talking about sympathy here. You must be able to feel the pain and know how it feels so that you know the appropriate solution to offer. And then a servant leader must be easily persuaded. I'm not saying that you should be
pendulum that goes.
somebody, a pendulum that doesn't have direction. But what I meant by being easily persuaded is that when you recognize a superior idea, you must be willing to change. Don't be rigid. Don't be too focused, trying to uh, trying to popularize your own idea to the detriment of an idea that could have moved the society better forward in a better direction. Then you must be able to communicate well.
Yes.
And I think this is very lacking in many leaders today. They are not able to communicate well. Sometimes they feel they are talking to people, but communication is not taking place. And once people cannot understand what you're saying, communication has not happened. And that is one quality that a servant leader must cultivate. Then a servant leader must have self and environmental awareness. For me, self-awareness is the best thing that can ever happen to you as a leader. If you are not self-aware as a leader, you are dead. You are dead. And if you don't know what is happening in your environment, you are equally dead. So that is another area a servant leader must be able to excel. You must be self-aware. You must also have awareness of what is happening around you. Then a servant leader must be able to collaborate with other people. If you are not able to collaborate, there is no way you can participate in share leadership. There is no way you can have participatory leadership. There is no way you can even encourage consultation of those who are better than you, who are able to see things better than the way you are seeing things. So you must be able to collaborate with others. And last but not the least, as a servant leader, you must understand that you are accountable to people.
100%.
You must understand that it is the people you are accountable to. But we see a lot of failure in this direction. Leaders don't want to be accountable to their people. they felt they are the leader, so they have the right to protect that. Once you become a public figure, once you become a public figure, you become the property of the states. So everybody must know what is happening in your life. It's not only when you need resources to take care of your head that you'll be taking the resources of the state. People must know what is happening to you as their leader. You must be accountable to them. So I think those are the points that I felt
I can sneak
I
this
want to
in,
bring up. Yeah.
and I think we said before, courage.
Courage.
The life thing.
Mm,
Courage.
mm,
How many people have chickened out when
mm,
they're confronted with
mm,
life thing?
mm,
And
mm,
that means it goes with it, sacrifice. Because
mm,
when you do the right thing, may be sacrificial.
mm. So quickly, let's talk about the failure of a leader. What is, or perhaps maybe there are many, what are the main causes of the leadership failure? Or if you want to put it in another way, what are the leadership challenge that we have in our contemporary society today?
Indeed. And I think it goes with why is it difficult to have servant leadership?
Yeah,
It goes in both
yeah,
directions.
yeah,
And if you think about it, most of these things have been mentioned because indeed it is the cost of leadership is very high
it's high.
because you are automatically you have a target on your back
Yeah.
the moment you step out in leadership,
Mm,
the moment you decide to help solve a problem, to
mm,
organize how problems to resolve, then you're suddenly going to be confronted with a lot of difficulties.
exactly.
So when we're talking about leadership, it's not an invitation to a party to kumbaya or
Mm,
to let's go and enjoy. No, it's a life of sacrifice by its very nature.
mm,
Ask our apex leader, Jesus.
mm,
It, it is what it is. It is a you are you are moving away from comfort
mm,
to uh to a point of sacrifice. And I keep saying this because we have we this that's why it is very difficult to find true leaders, to find servant leaders,
mm.
because the alternative appeals more. That if I can get a position, I
Yeah,
can I need I can
I
direct,
can I can decree my way out of any
I
circumstances.
can decree, my life, my family is made. We are
Yeah,
made for
yeah,
life. And
mm,
that's how people approach it because they see it as a opportunity to benefit themselves. But that's not what leadership is. And the challenges are that in that the courage to not be popular
mm,
is
mm,
hardly what anyone wants to embrace.
mm, mm,
It's very difficult to stand alone
mm,
for a season or for seasons.
mm,
But sometimes you can say the right thing and you know that this is the right thing to do.
mm,
But you have a lot of pressure that is
mm,
pushing you to say, no, let's go the other direction. And you know when we do this, we're going to mortgage the future
mm,
of our children.
mm,
It takes courage
mm,
that may even be at the cost of personal sacrifice. The
mm,
cost of leadership is very high.
mm,
And that's why we've had a lot of leadership failure. Well, it's we can also say that there is hardly, sometimes the investment in leadership
mm,
is not there because most people in position of leadership feel insecure. They
mm,
think that if they empower the other person,
mm,
they backstab, and that happens. It's a
mm.
reality. A lot
Yeah,
of people have suffered a lot of betrayal,
yeah,
but you see, a leader is also taking a risk because he knows
yeah,
that I can be betrayed. Look at Jesus.
yeah,
One of the people he was investing in
yeah,
was actually the one that stabbed him in the back.
yeah.
That is part of the terrain.
It's part of it. Mm,
That's why I've been using that word, the willingness to sacrifice.
mm,
That is not that doesn't sound palatable, I know.
mm.
But
And you cannot say because somebody is going to betray you, you are not going to be the kind
no,
of
no,
leader that you should
no.
be.
In fact, look at what Jesus said. Jesus said, "No greater love has any man
Mm.
than
That lays that his life down for his friends.
It
Mm,
says, as a matter of fact, you cannot lead people
mm,
or you are dead to.
mm.
to,
Self.
to the preservation of yourself.
Mm.
This is where leadership is very difficult.
Yeah, to add to what you said, I think I will also want to explore the failure of leadership from this angle. When a leader believes that I am entitled to this, or this is my right, this is my inheritance, this belongs to me, it's also one of the reasons why we have failure of leadership. Now, the reason why I am trying to bring that point out is that as leaders, we must realize that when we find ourselves in a leadership position, is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not our birthright. There is nothing like you are born to rule. There is nothing like this is my, and I think that is one of the challenge of monarchical leadership style that has kind of eroded our societal values in Africa, because most of the heirs to the throne that came from the monarchical structure believes whether they don't believe they need to acquire certain quality to be able to rule well. They just believe that since it is our lineage that becomes kings, whether I am good or not, it just has to be my turn to become king. But that is not the way kings are raised.
That's a
You
fair
have
point.
to see it as a privilege, and you have to build capacity into yourself to be able to match that position. So as we will be wrapping up, I just want us to reflect, and now we're now trying to conclude. Now, now reflecting on the type of leadership that is suitable for the African society, can we then ask if a servant leader can coordinate the process of shared participatory and consultative leadership together as a leader? Does he have that capacity to now harness this virtue of a servant leader? Can he then now harness these virtues together and make it good for us in African society?
I think you're spot on, and just towing the line of our discussion thus far,
Yeah,
both in this edition and the previous one,
mm,
you would say, even though this is not limited to Africa, but in the
yeah,
Africa,
yeah,
certainly, servant leadership is the kind of quality or the kind of leadership that we must begin to cultivate
mm,
if if we would have any chance
mm,
of surviving as a people.
mm,
Because if we continue to do the damage that has been done,
mm,
uh, sometimes you can say, well, we can repair things, but if something is so damaged, it will take time,
mm,
and sometimes it will be very increasingly difficult. So
mm,
I say that all of the attributes of servant leadership that we have discussed, and more we haven't discussed,
and more, yeah.
are certainly ones that are pertinent.
Mm,
It's an imperative for us to begin to have this, where there is collaboration with sincerity. I will even begin with a reintroduction of value. Do we value people? I wish we can just begin from simple steps
yeah,
and,
simple steps.
and have a campaign
Mm,
with all of our people, leaders, whether it is in political or professional or business or whatever, or even in religious environment,
mm,
value the people. Let's have proper reflective sessions.
mm,
How much do you value the people?
mm,
How do you demonstrate that you value the people? What would you do to show that you value the people? Let's even understand that to start with.
mm,
Because if we don't, everything else does not make much sense.
mm,
Cannot. help people that you do not
mm,
value. You
mm,
cannot invest in people that you do not value.
mm,
You cannot serve the people you do not value. It
mm,
just won't happen. It
mm,
will ever.
mm. Thank you very much. Um, I would just say, adding to what you said, that servant leadership is what we truly need, because if we look at our society as Africans, uh, we can definitely see some of these principles of, let's say, democracy, for example. It's not a new idea in Africa, because even in our monarchical system, we have the principle of shared leadership. We have the principle where then is another thing if certain monarchs are practicing it, but we do know from our legends that we have these principles readily available in the system. We have the principle of shared leadership. We have the principle of participatory leadership. We have the principle of consultative leadership. So there is no doubt that these elements are present in our leadership system. But then, to now help us galvanize these principles together is what we are talking about. And that is where a servant leader comes into the picture. Somebody who is humble enough, somebody who is able to have an helicopter view of every issue on ground and be able to say, hey, look, let's see how we can share this responsibility amongst ourselves. And you go and lead in this way, and I will lead in this way. Then you bring your outcome together, and then we look at the outcomes together, and then we can then forge a better direction for our society. And then we also allow people to also participate in the leadership. It takes somebody who has a servant leadership mindset to be able to do this. An autocratic leader will never encourage a participatory leadership style of government. It will never participate in shared leadership style of government. It will never be consultative. Even when they try to do consultation, they already know what they are going to do in their mind. And that is why servant leadership is very key
Absolutely.
to pushing
And
these ideas forward.
100%. Just to add something very tiny.
Yeah,
Sometimes I don't want people to mishear us.
yeah.
When we say somebody, what we really mean is that somebody
Can be
is
you. Yeah,
a school
yeah,
system,
yeah,
is a church system,
yeah.
is a business system,
Mm,
is a political system,
mm,
is in the family. In fact, is sitting right in your desk, is lying down on your bed. So we're not saying we're not looking for somebody mystical to just appear and come and help our lives and stuff. No, we're saying you must be the change that you
mm,
wish to.
mm. Now, as we wrap up, I know we spent quite some time. I just want to hear your view. Do you have an example of a servant leader in our current society? It could be, it doesn't have to be in Africa, it could be anywhere in the world. Do you have an example of a servant leader that you can talk about and just share with people?
100%. I mean, if you talk about some of the attributes we have discussed and ask, have I seen this in people? Oh, the answer is 100% yes. And if I recall, unfortunately, some of them have passed on now, but
Mm,
I recall, I have two very good examples.
mm,
They're alive. John Maxwell is one of them.
mm,
Dr.
mm.
Miles.
That's true. Mm,
The first time I met Dr. Miles, it changed my entire idea about leadership.
mm,
I He was one of the people that helped me to see that I should not walk past anyone, regardless of their status,
mm,
without stopping by to say hello
mm,
and check and
mm,
just and treat them like a thousand, like they are worth 1,000 times more.
mm,
And honestly, Shegun, I've taken this into my work environment. When
mm,
I'm speaking to people that are from different
mm,
cultures, I can sense that they feel like their sense of worth or value seem to just be enhanced when they're with me. They enjoy talking to me. Some of them will say, "Oh, I thank you so much for your time. I really enjoy speaking to you."
mm,
It's driving me. It's some of the things I've seen and heard from these leaders.
mm,
Because when I'm also with them, I see that they pay attention to me. They treat me like I'm not just somebody from a village in
mm,
Africa. They
mm,
they I feel valued
mm,
when I'm with them.
mm,
And that has dropped for me. That's what I mean by culture, creating a culture that
mm,
can be transferred from
mm,
one to another. So that
mm,
what you do that is of value, they
mm,
can imbibe it and also make it happen in the environment. So that is the reason why I'm also investing in young people now. And when they're around me, I want them to feel relaxed. I want them to feel like, look, I don't want to be anywhere else. I have learned that and by watching people that do it and taking lessons from them to also inculcate or cultivate that in my environment. So I can at least mention those two people. I
mm,
I never felt less than
mm,
with them. They made me feel many times more.
mm. Thank you. Well, I want to also re-echo your sentiment on Dr. John C. Maxwell, who has been. I've never met him in person, but I've read a lot of his books. I've listened to hundreds of his messages, and he has been impacting my life since 1998. And I can undoubtedly say that in all these years that I've known John C. Maxwell from afar, I can say he's somebody who lives out what he preaches. And you can see in his leadership now is even more his leadership in his when he's almost close to 80 now is even more interesting than when he was younger, because you can see the man gradually winding down.
Is empowering more people
Exactly, it's gradually winding down,
to
and
back
that
him up.
is the beauty of a leader. And how I wish our leaders in Africa can also embrace this way of leadership. You don't have to die in your position as a leader and leave a huge vacuum for people to deal with. You can empower people. You can begin to step back step by step so that people can take over and even do a better job that you could have done. That for me is an example of an empowering servant leader. Another leader that I want to talk about, of course, well, many people may not know him, but I listened to one of his podcasts and I've seen one or two of his public action, which has really left an imprint on my own mind, and that is the Prime Minister of India, Modi. This man, if you want to talk about a leader that has the interests of his people at the back of his mind, it is Modi. When you hear him talk about Indian people in the public, I mean, you'll be impressed. I don't know of many leaders today that talk about their people in such a lovely way. Listening to Modi talk about Indian people is very refreshing, very encouraging that the future of leadership is actually great. And it is easy for him because this is a man who came from a very poor background. He wasn't born with silver spoon. And I think he said for the first 19 years or there, but I can't really remember for how long he had to walk barefoot without shoe. And he overcame all those difficulties to become the Prime Minister of India. Whenever this man wants to take a decision, the first thing on his mind is, how does this benefit my people? Not how does this benefit my family?
And that's because he values them.
He values them. And that is a perfect example of a kind of servant leaders, a servant leader that I think our African leaders should cultivate themselves to become. Well, I think we've gone a long way. I don't want us to go beyond this. There is still more and more things to talk about leadership. This is providing a blueprint. What we are doing is that we are presenting a blueprint for our society to see what they can embrace and then implement. We are not in a position to implement some of this, but by the divine ability that we have received from our own maker, we will be presenting the blueprint as we have received them. And we only hope that our leaders out there at all levels can then begin to adopt and adapt this blueprint into their different leadership situations. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Kunle. I'm very happy to do this with you. And I really appreciate the time that we have spent together talking about servant leadership.
Nothing is more delightful. And I just feel like, at least in our own little way, we are raising the conversation.
Exactly. We
That's
are
a
raising
great.
the conversation. And we are not unnecessarily coming after anybody. We want our leaders to be better. We want our church leaders to be better. We want our political leaders to be better. We want leaders at all
Want to be
levels.
better as well.
We want to be better as well. So that's just the idea behind it. It's not to run anybody down or to make anybody look little in their own eye.
Yeah. Not at all. I mean, look, if we don't value where we came from, we
Mm,
wouldn't be doing it. It's
mm,
because we know that we can be better. It's because
mm.
that tomorrow can be better than today. That's why we're doing it. And we are obligated to do this. Uh,
Exactly.
we cannot shut our eyes and pretend that everything is hunky-dory.
Mm,
We make a contribution
mm,
while also embracing the challenge of leadership
mm,
personally.
mm, mm. Thank you. It's good to be with you today, Kunle.
Thank you
Hope
so
to
much.
see you next month for another edition of Leadership Blueprint. God bless you. My regards to your family.
And to yours as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye-bye.